We're live? We're live. What's up, guys? Give us a couple minutes, a few seconds, whatever. Get some people on. It's been so long since I've been live on YouTube. Months. There we go. Getting some people on here now. I see, what's 8 people? 8 people. What's going on, guys? Hopefully you're doing well. Let's see. Josh, what's up, buddy? How's your season been, man? I ain't talked to you in a little bit. I think the last time I talked to Josh, he was tracking a deer. What's up, Ron? How's it going? Chief, doing good. Been good. Hope you're doing well. How's your season been, Ron? Josh, 1 buck, 5 does. Awesome. Good to hear. I guess all that work and stuff you did in your food plot has paid off. Have heard much from you in a while. Yeah, been busy, off on other stuff. Haven't hunted much this year. Just been doing other adventures and different things, and I gave up one of my hunting properties, so that is working on getting new places and all that stuff. So a lot of stuff going on this year. These questions pop up so fast I can't. It doesn't give you time to read them. Let's see. Live chat, all messages are visible. No, they're not. Scotty, what's up, dude? What's going on, man? I haven't seen Scotty comment in a while. Glad he's back. Winter season, a lot of small bucks. My shooter got one of his horns knocked off. Yeah, it happens a lot. You see that a lot of times from fighting or whatever happens. I remember 4, 5, 6 years ago, probably 6 years ago, I shot a buck, and it was later in the season, probably December, this time of year or so, and both his antlers fell off. They still hadn't fixed this chat. Questions pop up, they're gone. Donald, good to see you, man. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, doing good. Scotty, I've been lost on TikTok. Yeah, I had TikTok for a little while. I don't like TikTok. It's kind of, I don't know, not for me. I did post a few videos, but didn't like it. Scotty, how was your season? I shot 16. I think it was 16 point buck in Kentucky. Opening week back in September in Kentucky. It was like the 4th day of the season, I think. So September 7th or 8th, maybe. I was down there hunting with Jeff, and he shot one as well the day before, or it might have been 2 evenings before. Can't remember. But anyway, shot that, and then I've only hunted twice since then. So this year I have not hunted much. Just been doing other adventures. But yeah, that was my season. I hunted twice since then, and I think this is the only year where I haven't hunted much. Um, I remember probably 15 years ago where when I broke my hand. You guys can still see my hand. It's kind of like deformed there a little bit. Broke my hand that year right around October, and I couldn't use a release to draw my bow back, so I didn't really hunt that much that year. I think I did hunt maybe in December that year and shot a doe, but other than that, I've pretty much hunted every single year for 22 years. So this year, like I said, I killed a buck, hunted, twice since then, and that was my year. I spent all spring, summer preparing, planting my food plots, and working on people's properties, and all this stuff, and um, that was my season. There's some questions here. How was your season? Firefighting outdoorsman. What's up, Nate? Scotty said, well. Nate says, what's up? Super Dave, what's going on, man? Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Boyd's Outdoors. I have a spike on my land that only has one antler. Yeah, you see that quite often. It happens a lot. I'm 1 for 4 so far. Scotty, season over? No. Season goes end of January here in Maryland. I might do some late season hunting. Not sure yet. Hard to say right now. Boys Outdoors, what's the most bucks you have seen on the smallest parcel you have hunted? I've hunted a 5-acre piece. I think one sitting I saw 7 different bucks. That was a couple years ago. And then when I was younger, I had permission to hunt 2 acres, a 2-acre parcel, which butted up to other properties as well. But on that property, one morning I think I saw like 10 different bucks or so, and that was a property that didn't have anything done to it. The other property that I mentioned first a couple years ago, that property just had some different food plots and very minor things. But a 100-acre piece that I've hunted, I saw 15 bucks, different bucks, one sitting. It just depends, really. I mean, depends what the property can hold, how much food you have, how much pressure there is, the way the land lays. I mean, there's no set rule, I don't think, for how many deer you see. It depends on what your property backs up to, what your neighbors are doing, how big the property is. There's so many variables that go into that. I don't think there's a set rule for it. Comments, man, they go so fast. Ron, I know I've asked this before, but I'm strongly going to do winter rye, red clover, and oats this coming year. What is the best time to plant the oats and rye? 45 days or so before your average first frost. So there's no set date on any time you plant something. You go by temperatures and weather conditions. So wheat and rye, I mean, you can plant that up to 30 days, 3 weeks before your first frost. But I typically like to get it out roughly about 45 days or so before the frost. If you plant it too early, say 60 days or 70 days, some people do, and it's a mistake because a lot of times there's still a lot of green left out there. So the deer are focusing on the natural browse and the forage and stuff that's out there, the natural forage, and the wheat and rye will get too tall, which will become too stemmy and becomes unpalatable. So if you wait until later into the year, later into September, whatever your state you're in, where you get to that sweet spot of 45 days to 30 days, by that time most of your browse and stuff is going dormant. So then that's where your food plot becomes powerful because it's very palatable. The deer are eating it. so it's constantly regrowing, creating that fresh growth and fresh tips per se. Hope that helped you, Ron. Farmall Fanatic, haven't seen you in a while. Problem with 2 acres is you better get right on retrieval ahead of time. Yeah, I mean, you have to work with what you have. I was giving an example, buck-wise, but yeah, it's tough sometimes. You got to make sure you can, the deer goes on another property, make sure you have permission, whatever you want to do with that. But that's how I used to hunt back in the day, small properties like that, neighborhoods and stuff, and you had to deal with, getting permission from neighbors and to retrieve the deer and all that. Reaper, opinions on water sources like stock tanks. They can be good, depending on the area or property that you're in. If you have a lot of green food sources, the water holes aren't going to be hit as much. During the spring and summer, they're pretty much useless, because deer get most of their moisture from greens. I've said that for years, and people used to laugh at it, but it's true. Deer get most of their moisture content through food, green food. So water tanks are pretty much useless during the spring and summer, unless you're down south where you get extreme heat, you have lack of green, lack of food. Then yeah, they may hit them a little bit, but they become very attractive attractive during the fall when it gets really cold, especially during the rut, because two reasons. One is the bucks are chasing, they're breathing, if they're in chasing a doe or something, they're panting, so they're getting rid of a lot of moisture through their breath. And then also at that time of year, everything's dormant. If you don't have food plots, there's no green food, so there's no moisture content in the food that they consume. So if you have a lot of green food plots that's still green during that time of year, they're still going to be getting moisture from that, so your water holes become less attractive. Also, if you have bears in the area, bears will overtake a water hole. So not a good idea. Josh, my deer apparently love my new pear trees too much. Not only did they rub them, but broke them in half. Yeah, they're can be tough like that. You got to make sure you stake them and tube them and protect them, so they can mature. Ron, can it be mowed, Chief? Wheat and rye can be mowed. It's no different than a deer biting it, right? If a deer takes a bite of wheat or rye, bites it in half or whatever, it'd be the same as mowing it. In the spring and summer, so if you plant it in the fall, and then in the spring and summer, when it's growing, if you mow that, then its job is trying to create a seed head. So if you mow that in the spring and summer like 2-3 times, you'll kill it off. So you don't have to use herbicides or whatever to do that. You can just mow it. That's what I did this past spring. I waited till it was in the dough stage or whatever, creating a seed, mowed it. It was really tall, 4 or 5 feet tall, mowed it, and then came back in like a week later, mowed it again, and came back a week later, it was completely brown. So you don't need to use the herbicides to do that. You can just mow it. Comments keep disappearing. Guys, don't think about that. Farmall Fanatic. Mark C. What grows good in sandy soil? Thanks. Sandy soil is pretty much kind of rough for anything, really. But you can do buckwheat, I believe, does well in there. Clovers can do well. With sandy soil, it's like a screen door, so it's hard to grow anything. It's hard for the soil to hold nutrients, and things like that. It's hard to hold moisture. So it's best to try to build that organic matter through rotations of buckwheat and just wheat and rye and stuff in this fall, and just kind of constantly work that back into the soil. And eventually, it's going to take some time, but if it's really sandy, it's going to take a lot of time, but you can build it up. It's possible. It happens all the time, and you can have good success with it. Josh, my radishes in my green machine are the size of my arm at the moment, but they have not been hitting the brassicas as much. They are mainly hitting the wheat and oats. Must still not be cold enough here yet. Yeah, Josh, sometimes if they're not used to turnips, radishes, and things, sometimes it takes them a little while to get used to, um, especially if you have other food available. And then also temperature-wise as well, like you said. If it doesn't get extremely cold, sometimes they won't eat them. And sometimes I've seen them not eat them at all. But they always eat the tops, just not the actual bulb. Midwest Outdoors, what's up, buddy? I've planted Whitetail, Institute, Clover, and Antler King Clover for years, but the price adds up. Is there a benefit to that over Clover from my co-op when planting a larger area? When you get in situations like that, when you buy from like your small seed companies like that, yes, I think there's a difference depending on the variety that you buy compared to what you would buy at your co-op. But on larger things like that, I tend to go to the co-op or your local feed store and buy larger bags of clover, such as 25, 50 pounders, um, because it's cheaper that way. And depending on the variety that you buy, you can have just as good success. You don't always have to, buy from like a seed company. I kind of tend to get my like specialty seeds per se from a small seed company. I get mine from Domain Outdoors, but they have different varieties that you can't buy from like a co-op. With different types of hybrid brassicas and different types of clover and things that you just can't find from your local feed store. But like wheat, rye, buckwheat, big bags, 50-pound bags of clover for large areas, I'm going to buy from the feed store. Tim, what do you think about grain sorghum and pea plot? Again, I guess it can be okay. Deer eat sorghum sometimes. A better option would be like millet. Deer love like brown top millet. You can plant; they'll eat the tops off of it when it gets cold, because it's got the grain, carbs, and stuff in there. But that'll work good. Belinda, what are your thoughts on Domain's new overhaul blend? I want to continue working on my soil. I think it's a great mixture, and I'll be planting it this year as well. I should say next year. But yeah, keep working on it. You can add that in. You can continue to do your rotations of buckwheat, and you can even do wheat and rye and add some of the clovers in. I mean, there's lots of things you can do to improve the soil. Main thing is just having something green in that soil all the time. That way it's constantly able to work on the soil, and when there's something green in there, you're exchanging nutrients, you're exchanging moistures, and the roots are working on the soil and things like that. So you can have good success with it no matter what you plant, as long as it's in the soil. Let it do its thing. Southern Roots Chicken Farm. I put out a scrape Saturday, and some does used it the next morning. That's awesome. Very cool. Nolan, what do you think about Oklahoma whitetail hunting? I've never hunted Oklahoma, but I've never even been to Oklahoma. But I know a couple people that hunted there, and they've had good success, and you can kill some big deer there. I know back in the day when I was a kid, the old Roger Ragland VHS tapes. That's where he lives. That's where he made all his videos from Oklahoma, and they killed, he killed a lot of deer back then. So I think it's a good hunting state. Ron, I get the rye for $19 for 56 pounds and $12 for my oats. That's a good price. I know it varies from year to year, but between like the rye and the wheat, sometimes it seems like it flip-flops a little bit. But $19 for 56 pounds and $12 for oats. I've noticed with the oats though, I'm assuming that the $12 for oats is just kind of like farm oats. I've noticed that when you buy the farm oats, they're not very attractive compared to like buck forage oats. I think you get what you pay for. But just from planting different varieties of oats, those farm oats that you can buy at the uh, co-op or fertilizer store or whatever, they're not very attractive. And I've noticed, what's the store, Rural King? If you have a Rural King by you, every fall, it seems like they have a huge sale on buck forage oats. It's like I don't know how much they are, maybe $30 a bag, but then they have a sale and they're like $15. So it's a good deal, and it's a much higher quality oat. Mark C, what is the price of buckwheat? Thanks. It varies, maybe $40 for 50 pounds, I think. $38, 45, somewhere around that margin. Buckwheat is a little bit more, I guess, expensive, but I mean, it just depends on what you're used to planting, really. I mean, I like planting buckwheat for sure. This year, I should say, I ended up buying from a farmer, and I will never do that again. It was a mess. It was full of weeds and straw, and wouldn't come out of the spreader, and it was a nightmare. But that's what you get for trying to cut corners and save $1. Ron, I see you use this antler grow. What does this actually do for the plot? Ron, I think going into next year, it'll be 6 years now, 7 years since I've used it. What it does for the plot, it's not necessarily for the plot, it's for anything that's green. So all your browse and things like that. So deer consume natural browse, and your food plot, is natural browse that we plant. But what it does to the plant is it actually absorbs through the leaves of the plant and gives that plant micronutrients. Micronutrients, if you were to do a soil test, your soil, I guarantee, is lacking micronutrients. It's the most lacked thing in your soil. And the food we consume, the vegetables we consume, it's not there anymore. So they give the micronutrients back to the soil or back to the plant through the leaves. So when you do that, you're giving the micronutrients directly to the plant, and that plant has those nutrients now, other than your standard, NPK or whatever. You're giving it there. That it allows all your nutrients and things in that plant to work together instead of, having a shortage of here, because when you lack something, other things, struggle as well. So this gives it all at one shot to that. So you increase the proteins, you increase the micronutrient level in that plant, the proteins, digestible proteins, which means more sticks to the ribs. So when you actually use it and you actually spray large areas, you get to see that. You get to see the weight gain and things like that on the deer. We shot 2 bucks in Kentucky this year on Jeff's property, and he's the owner, so he sprays a lot of pasture and food plots and whatever he can reach. and the butcher made a comment on how much fat that was actually on the deer that he's never seen before, because you increase those digestible proteins and the quality of the food, and it reflects on the deer, not only body weight, but just an overall healthier deer. Midwest Outdoors. Back to my clover question. Is there a specific strain of clover you suggest, such as white clover or red clover? I don't ever plant a single variety of clover. It's always a mixture, whether it's a three-way, four-way. It can be red, it can be white, it can be dino, jumbo. I mean, there's so many different ones. Uh, Dutch clover. I mean, there's so many different ones that it's always best to plant that mixture to where you can have 3 to 4 together, and you might have one that's very fast growing and tall, and another one that's medium height, and then like white Dutch and stuff it's really short. So you have those stages in there, and you always the white Dutch might not be palatable, say in September 10th, but then something else is, and then all of a sudden a month later, then the white Dutch is palatable and tasty to the deer. So if you plant that variety, it works out a lot better instead of a single. Right, never plant a single variety of anything. Michigan farming, do you use a Tacticam? If so, how do you like them? Thinking about buying one? Yes, I have like 4 or 5 Tacticams. They work very well. Um, I use them on my bow. I have like a rifle mount that I use. They all work well. I like them. Matthew, how's everybody doing? Doing good. William, do you plant brassicas in the same plot every year, or do you rotate? I plant anywhere from maybe 2 to 3 years in the same plot, and then you can rotate it off. People say that you can't do that, but you can. You just have to rotate crops, do soil samples, replenish the nutrients, and some plants give to the soil and some plants take from the soil. So realize that brassicas are need a lot of nitrogen, so they rob nitrogen. So if you have clovers in there the following year, whatever, you're replenishing the nitrogen, and and I always spray too with the antler grow, so I'm always giving the micronutrients back to the plants as well. So I can plant brassicas in the same spot every year and not have a problem. Jeff, would it be a good idea to plant some clover inside my switchgrass, possibly 1 acre of clover to 3 acres of switchgrass that runs next to 5 acres of woods? Jeff, what is the purpose of that? What are you trying to do with the switchgrass? Matthew, I planted a food plot this year and it came out amazing. I killed 4 out of it this year so far. Awesome, man. That's awesome. How do you go about reaching out for a sponsorship? Example, Spy Point. It's not it's not like it was back in the day where all the companies were giving product out all the time, and giving money and things like that. It's 100% different than it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. And I'll tell you exactly why. Is that it became, everybody started an outdoor page. Everybody was outdoors this, outdoors that, and I did the same thing. I started a name and wanted to do what I do. And people don't keep their word, so they tell the companies like, hey, I'm going to do this for you and do this and do this and do this, and then they don't do it. So the company, they put their name on the line and their self, and they give you, say, a couple $100 or whatever of product, and then that person never does anything. They don't promote them. They don't do anything. So therefore, the company just got burned. So the companies have realized, like, hey, there's so many people out here, doing this, and we're not seeing a return in the investment. So nowadays, it's a lot harder to work with a company because they've been burned so many times. They don't believe you because, like I said, they give out product or give out money, and you don't do what you're going to say. So my suggestion would be to either prove yourself, have an established, platform to where, you're just not like one and done where, you're whatever's outdoors, and then all of a sudden you make a couple of videos, and all of a sudden you disappear for, a year or something, 2 years, and then expect somebody to give you free stuff. You can, buy stuff, start using it, a product or whatever, and then start tagging that company. And if they see that you do good, maybe you can reach out to them like, hey, I've been using your product and here's what I've done for you already. Let's work something out, or something like that. It's 100% different than it was 5 years ago. It's a lot tougher now, and especially with, the economy and the way things are going and everything. It's tough. If you go in, if you go into it thinking you're going to make money or be rich or whatever, it's not going to work. Josh, I'm heading into work. I'll catch you later. Good seeing you again. Yes, sir. Good to see you too. Ron, thanks for all the info, Dave. Have a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year. Same to you, Ron. Merry Christmas. Michigan Farming, thanks for the info. You're welcome. I plan on going to Kansas, Kentucky, or Ohio next year, and you have to buy a tag, right? What is the cost, and can you buy more than one? I don't know how Kansas is. Kentucky, though, is quite expensive. I think Kentucky is $350, $375, I think. Ohio, I haven't hunted Ohio in a couple years. I want to say it's right around 200. Kentucky is $1, 2 does, I believe, $1 tag. Ohio is $1. I don't know how many does you can get. I'm not familiar. It's been, like I said, it's been a few years since I've hunted Ohio. I don't know anything about Kansas. I don't know their licensing system there. I never hunted there, never been there. So I'm not sure about that. Living every day outdoors. What's up, Jay? Hey, Dave. Good to see you back here on YouTube. Happy holidays. Here in North Florida, the plots are still doing great. Had a good season, killing a 10-point and 7 hogs. Hey, Jay, yeah, I saw that buck you killed. It's a nice one. Congrats to that. And 7 hogs. It's all the hogs you guys have down there. That's always good, too. Gavin, best spring/fall food plot. Well, there's no really good answer there because I don't know what you're working with. But I mean, some good things to plant in the spring if you need to plant anything food-wise. I mean, clovers are always your base. If they're large enough plots to where you're trying to actually feed deer. Buckwheat is a good one to help improve soil. It's not really deer food, but deer do consume it. I usually plant buckwheat when I'm trying to work on the soil and improve that and to smother weeds and shade out weeds and such. Like I said, if the plots are big enough, clover is always a base. You can't go wrong with clover. As far as in the fall, you absolutely cannot go wrong with winter wheat. Winter wheat is workhorse. Deer can't wear it out. If a deer takes a bite of it, it's going to continue to grow. Unlike a brassica, a deer takes a bite of a brassica, it's not growing back, unless you get into your like hybrid brassicas and stuff. But a fail-safe is winter wheat. Deer hammer winter wheat. You can even mix in some clovers with that as well, like annual clovers. And they're not going to wear it out. You'll have food all fall leading into the winter, and it's a great food source. You can't go wrong with it. I would plant that. I would plant that any day over anything. Question: thoughts about spreading switch, then plot screen, lightly disc, the following spring brush hog, and let the switch grow. It may work, but I don't see the switch coming in thick enough to make what you're trying to do. Whether, I guess I'm assuming you're making a screen for it, but I don't see that coming in like that. Switch is hard to establish. Any kind of weed competition and such, it's not going to work out. Frost seeding it works. You don't have to. You can plant it in the spring and it'll grow, but you have to control the weeds in it. But if you mix that with plot screen, I don't know what is plot screen. I don't know. I don't know what that mixture is, but if you mix that in there with that, I just don't see the switch coming in very thick. Travis, bow or rifle? Bow, 100%. Long range. EHD took 90% of the deer off my property. Man, that sucks. Sorry to hear that. Chris Mays, if you had to set up a small parcel, what would you plant for forbs and forages? I wouldn't necessarily plant forbs. They're going to come up naturally once you start doing some work, whether you're clear cut, select cut, burns, whatever. I would focus on, depending on how big that is and what you have to work with, I would focus on like a little select cut, or or even just cutting down some timber yourself to allow some regeneration of woody browse. As far as planting something, depending on, like I said, how big it is, how big the area is, how big the plot is, I would plant winter wheat, or if the plot's big enough, I would plant brassicas, or even mix in with some clovers, or things like that. I mean, select cuts are probably one of my favorite, just because you're not destroying the whole place, where you're eliminating 95% of the trees or something. Select cuts are always best, I think, just because you still have some timber standing, and then you have enough cleared to where you have enough sun to come down and allows things to regenerate. Jay, I will be focusing on the low K numbers on my plots this year. Gotcha. Very nice. That's what, each year you just, work on it, do the soil samples, and just, you can work on it each year. I frost seeded switchgrass last year, and it's coming in decent despite fairly poor conditions. Should I interseed in it again this year, or let it go and see what kind of stand I get? You could probably frost seed it again if you think it's too thin. Frost seed it again, and you work on it, and you can continue to mow it and things, and see how it becomes. But usually, the first year and a half, 2 years, it should be up, quite a bit. It should be pretty thick, 4 or 5 feet tall, I would think. 3 feet just depends on how much weeds you have and such. But if you're there, so you know what it looks like. But if it looks thin, I would probably frost seed more. Jeff, the switchgrass is for cover slash screening from a house on the property. The total property is 10 acres. Surrounding properties are row crop, beans, corn. Wanted some type of food for a kill plot. Jeff, I would not mix that. I believe you said clover. I would not mix that in with the switch if you're using it for a screen. Just because it's a screen, so you don't want that clover in that screen. Then if you're using that screen to walk behind or whatever, there's food in there, so you don't want the deer necessarily there. If you're using it for cover, then you have to consider what does that relate to on your property. If you're trying to cover this certain area, or create cover in this certain area with the switchgrass, do you really want the deer necessarily, hanging out there to where they have the food and the cover at the same spot? You want them to be able to move through your property, and I don't really think that would be a good idea, but I don't know how your property lays out. I don't know what it relates to or anything like that. So switchgrass is usually good on its own. I mean, there's situations where if you're like converting an entire field or something of switchgrass to where you can have different areas where things would regenerate inside of that. But strictly mixing clover in that, like purposely mixing clover in that, I don't think would be a good idea. Thanks for the info, Dave. Our YouTube channel has been doing very well this year in the Spanish outdoor community and just trying to make the best of it, starting to move toward reaching out for sponsorship. Very nice. Hey, what's up, Chris? What's up? Long time no see. Hope all is good. Happy holidays. Yeah, same to you, man. Hope you're doing good. Hope your dad as well. Long range crypto. What is the best drought tolerant clover? White Dutch does good. A Dino, I believe, is pretty drought tolerant. I mean, clover can withstand, I think, a good amount of drought. I never had a situation. Of course, I'm up northeast. Never had a situation where clover had necessarily like burnt out. The further you go down south, then it's tough to have a clover plot because, clover will burn out on very, very hot states. And even in the Northeast, you get July, August, you get those weeks where it's 95, and the heat index, up in the hundreds and stuff. It will kind of go dormant a little bit. And then especially if you mow that when it's that hot and you don't have moisture, you can set it back for sure. Barry, winter wheat over winter rye. Yes. I prefer winter wheat. I believe that it's a more palatable plant to the deer. It will tolerate the cold. It'll grow, germinate just as much as the winter wheat or rye. I'm sorry. It's the same, really. I just think that the wheat is more palatable. You can plant them side by side and you can judge for yourself. It might vary from place to place or whatever, but winter wheat is always the base that I would go to, and you can use rye as well. You can mix the two together. You can do a 50-50 mix of it together. You can do a 75-25 split, wheat to rye. You can do whatever, both will work. Neither one is wrong. I think I've just have found that the wheat is more palatable per se. Barry said thanks. Jeff, thank you. You're welcome. Kevin, luckily we snuck in a truckload of loam compost mix to build up soil over rocks next year. Very cool. Very cool. I know winter rye accepts a lower pH. that's what they say, but why plant in a low pH anyway? You should be working on the soil. Wheat will do just as well in low pH. And anything that you plant in a low pH soil is not going to be as palatable as something that's in a better soil. So I wouldn't look at it as what can I plant in this low pH soil. I'd look at it as what can I do to improve this soil, and make it not low pH anymore. Yeah, wheat, rye will grow in low pH. Oats do okay in low pH. Some types of clovers. I don't know the exact ones off the top of my head that what's going to be better in low pH, but clovers can do well in there as well. I mean, I've planted in the woods in the worst pH soil that you can find, and wheat, rye, everything does good. Gavin, thoughts about oats for a food plot? I think oats are great for a food plot if they're standalone, and you're in a northern state. You're going to be disappointed going into the winter months because they're going to frost out. A better option would be wheat or rye, and you can actually mix oats in with that as well. But I don't think that you should go like a high percentage because, like I said, the wheat or the oats are gonna frost out, and then you lose your volume of food. So if you say you had 75% oats, 25% wheat, the oats die out, then you only have 25% out of the 100% covered in your soil, so you're going to be missing food. So down south, where you don't get those really cold climates, oats would be better off for sure. They're oats, you can't go like, if you had to compare wheat, oats, and rye, oats is going to be up here as far as palatability. Kevin, best suggestions for what to plant on really rocky soil in Northeast? Like, I guess depending how rocky it is, but the smaller the seed, the better you're gonna have. Clovers would do well in rocky soil. If you had, I mean, I don't know how rocky you're talking here, but clover, smaller seed, depending how much soil you have, to be able to cover that seed. So if it's like 90% pure rock, then you're not going to have good luck, with anything really. But if it's just like rocks throughout the plot, not like solid rock where you still have a bunch of soil. I mean, that's how my place was. Had a bunch of rocks in it and things, and you just you work around and you just plant things and incorporate some green manure in there, and try to dig out the big ones and just work with it. Just bought 40 acres. I have an open 5-acre field in the front and the back. The middle of the property is thick oak trees. Where would be the best place to plant a food plot? Jacob, I have no idea because it doesn't really tell me anything too much. I don't know how the property's laid out. The best place for a food plot is just all, without knowing anything, is a spot that has enough sun and a spot that you can get in and out of without alerting deer. You have to be able to access the plot, maneuver around the plot to where entry and exit, where you're not busting the deer out, depending where the deer are bedding. You may have to create some sort of screen or something around the plot. But if you take that 5-acre plot and convert that entire thing to a food plot, it's really not going to be a daylight food plot per se because it's so large. If you take that plot and you divide it up with different types of screening or what, switch whatever it is, but you divide that into smaller plots, you're going to have more daylight action and more buck action on that food plot. A 5 acre plot, you got to think of yourself, if you're a deer and you walk out into a 5 acre field, how you're going to feel, and you're not going to feel very good. You're going to be cautious because you're out in the wide open. Anything can see you. Deer like to be around the edge of something, so consider that. Michigan farming, what's a good food plot mix? Never did a food plot before. If you've never planted a food plot, I'm going to tell you to plant winter wheat or winter rye. It's not you can mix the two together, go at about 150, 200 pounds per acre. If you mix the two together, then just, split it 50-50. But you cannot go wrong with that. Wheat is a workhorse. Deer will hammer it all fall going into the winter, and it's an attractive crop to plant. And it comes back in the spring. It's the first thing that greens up before anything else, and it provides a lot of tonnage, per acre when you have no other green foods around. So it really does help. It's a good crop to plant. Gavin, thumbs up. Chris Mays, I have a 7-acre parcel. 5 of the acres is solid grade dogwood. Has no ground vegetation. Thoughts on how much to clear out? How much to clear cut? 7-acre parcel. 5 of the acres is solid grade dogwood. Has no ground vegetation. Thoughts on how much to clear out? If you only have 7 acres, then I would take maybe. I can't see the property, so I don't know what it looks like per se. But I wouldn't take the entire thing of 7 acres. I would take maybe 25% out of that, 30% of it, or if you're creating, say, a food plot on one end of it, and you want to select cut the opposite end to where you're not thinning the entire woods. It's just hard to say, but I wouldn't take the whole thing. I would start at like 25, maybe 30% of that, and depending if you want to plant a food plot on one end or the other, determine where majority of your deer are going to be coming from to where you can leave that side of the woods standing, do a little select cut, create some more cover in that area, and you can create some travel corridors through there as well and funnel them to, say, a food plot on one end and have that select cut on the opposite end. Can I broadcast and call to pack winter wheat like winter rye? Yeah, same concept, Barry. Same idea. Same thing. Ron, do some videos of your hunts, Dave. I will when I go hunting. Kevin Odell, what's your thoughts on building a dough factory? I've been hearing this a lot lately, and I think it's silly. I think it's silly. A dough factory. Jacob, I was thinking just a strip along the tree line in the back. Was that the clear cut? Okay. I was thinking just a strip along the tree line in the back. Gotcha. Fishing part, always have some rye after harvest. Can you mix clover with it? Yeah. Mixing clover with the rye or wheat is very beneficial as well. It works good. Brandy, hi, I'm new. I just purchased 24 acres and it is in the shape of 2 pizza slices facing each other with a creek in the middle, gentle slope to creek. Would you put a food plot on side closer to the house? I would say you put it on the side where you can access the food plot and not spook the deer. If that, is closer to your house, then yeah. But just looking at that, thinking of it in my mind, like I would want to put the food plot on the opposite end away from the house to where, the deer aren't near your house. If you go outside, do stuff, you're not spooking them off the plot. They're on the opposite end. You can create some cover, around your house, depending on the woods and stuff is laid out. And you can create extra cover through there and then have the food plot on the backside. But it depends where you have to enter the woods, how you have to get to that area per se, that food plot. If you easier access, literally walking out your back door and get to it, then yeah, have some screening there, get to it, have good winds and stuff. But if it's easier to get to the backside where it would be closer to cover, where they bed or whatever, then maybe that might be a good option. Andrew, deer are always in my front yard. Gotcha. If they're in your front yard, I would have to really think about that. I wouldn't want to put the food plot by your house. I mean, you want them away from your house. Put that food like in the backside. Keep the deer away from your house, so you're not spooking them and different things like that. Just depends. Any more questions here? Let's see. All right, well, it's been an hour, so I just wanted to catch up with you guys. I haven't been live quite a while. So thanks for joining. If you guys are new, subscribe. Appreciate it. Hopefully you have a new or a good, had a good Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas to you guys. And we'll see you guys here shortly. We'll putting out some videos, and the New Year's coming, and new hunting properties, new adventures, and all that good stuff. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you guys on the next video. See you.